Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Manga review. This one's going to be for chapter 51, which is called Sacrifice. And yeah, pretty interesting title there. Obviously this adds to the hype surrounding this chapter, that we knew this was going to be placed at the end of a volume. Naming that chapter Sacrifice as well kind of led people to believe that, oh, is this going to be the chapter where something happens with Naruto, something happens with Sasuke, which we sort of knew has been happening, was going to happen. But in this case, it's more we end with the tease that, like, either probably in the next chapter or two, we will see something terrible happen to Naruto and who knows what else. But in this case, the sacrifice, yes, relates to the Naruto side of the plot, but it also, I think, is more directly about the Otsutsuki side of the plot, that the Otsutsuki typically go in pairs to try and grow a new chakra fruit, and one of them has to be a sacrifice to make the divine tree grow. So there is a dual meaning to the title. But yeah, overall, I chapter 51 I thought was pretty good. Definitely perhaps didn't cover as much ground as I thought or expected it would, but it still had really big moments at the end. I'm so excited for next week's chapter and the next couple. There was some interesting kind of new sort of lore details in terms of them clarifying to us stuff about the Otsutsukis traveling in pairs, and specifically how you grow a chakra tree. Again, some of this more just technical stuff that can be quite confusing to consider, but it's nicely sort of explained here. The main issue I'd have with this is still the general issue with Boruto as a manga, and that is that there is still quite a few kind of like filler panels to just kind of fill up time, and especially in this chapter they used them quite a lot in the Amado sections. There's just a lot of, you could have done that in like half the amount of time by just having Amado explain it, but you feel the need to constantly have other characters, question him and talk about it as just get to the point already, or consider something, or he needs to have characters prompt him to get the answers out. I mean, it's just like, I get it, you've been explaining things to us for the past 5-6 chapters, but please, you're here to give us the explanation. Give us the explanation. We don't need to see you have a back and forth every 5 pages with Shikamaru when we kind of just want the explanation. But overall, like I said, solid chapter. But I think the more exciting stuff is to come. So I think the next volume after this is actually going to be the big one, in a way, which is interesting. But yeah, we start off where we ended off last chapter, which was that Boruto realizes Isshiki can't kill him, and Ishiki's reaction basically tells Boruto, yeah, I'm right, Amitai, you couldn't be any more obvious, Mr. Isshiki. Sasuke wants to be filled in on, okay, explain how you are so confident about this, Boruto. And he brings up what Boro said to him during their fight a bunch of chapters ago. Thanks to you, the time limit that was urgently pressing on our plans might well have been lifted. I'm eternally grateful. I'll take you back along with Kawaki and treat you with care. So, this links into the divine tree plan that Amado mentioned earlier on. And Boruto's like, yes, I think Isshiki needs me to be a part of that section of things. That's why he can't afford to have me die. And his kind of pause here pretty much tells Boruto and Sasuke that they're onto it here. And this is interesting because we really haven't, I think, since chapter 45 or 46, really addressed the end goal of the plan, which is that Isshiki ultimately, like a lot of the Otsutsuki, just wants to grow a chakra tree. But the specifics of that we're not entirely sure about. Okay, he has a 10 tails and stuff like that. We learned stuff about that already. But this chapter does give us a lot of the details surrounding, okay, well, once we've figured out how Isshiki survives with karma marks and so on, how is he going to execute the second stage of the plan? And that's what they get into here. So the question immediately comes up between Shikamaru and Amado. What does Boruto have to do with all of this? So he points out, as I said earlier, 10 tails is the seedling necessary for growing a divine tree. But it's no ordinary planting, of course. You can't just bury it in soil and add water. For 10 tails to become a divine tree, there's one special condition that must be met. You need to feed a living Otsutsuki to 10 tails. That is an important reveal, and even though I think a lot of people sort of figured out or were leaning in this direction as being the case because of the constant allusion to like pairs, how the Otsutsuki constantly sort of like sacrifice themselves either to each other or like Kaguya merging with the 10 tails and stuff like that, there was going to be some other element like this to it, and it's pretty direct here with the confirmation, so I definitely appreciate that. But this double page spread is probably a good example of the issues I sort of had with regards to them needlessly like extending things on, in terms of, okay, he gets to the explanation, and then he's like, for 10 tails to become a divine tree, there's one special condition that must be met. So we want to know what the special condition is. Cut to a panel of Kawaki just looking, then to a panel with Sumire and Katasuke saying, a special condition. Cut to a panel of Shikamaru saying, what special condition? Quit stalling and just spill it. Cut to a panel of Amado smoking, taking a break. Cut to a panel of Kawaki looking to the side. Then he finally says it. It's just like, what is the point of like the 5 panels you have in between him saying the one special condition and then revealing what it actually is? That's like, you know, half a page, more than half a page of, in my mind, almost like needless panels that could have been used elsewhere. But, you know, I think it's just stuff like that that kind of piles up over the course of like 40 pages. But we move on. Isshiki is kind of like, oh, Boro was the one to let part of the plan slip. That's why I haven't heard from him. You defeated him. I never expected him to be defeated by a small fry like you. Boruto sort of says, Konoha Genin are legit. I did it with Kawaki and the others. So Sasuke points out that, oh yeah, we already know quite a bit about you. We know about the divine tree, the 10 tails, why you require Kawaki. But Ishiki's really confident here. What of it? What good is that knowledge when you don't have the power to stop me? Which is completely true. They may know exactly what he wants to do, but he's going to do it unless they can stop him here, and that's the whole point. This is when Boruto acts, and his big thing now that he knows that Isshiki doesn't want to kill him and needs him is to threaten himself. If Boruto kills himself, that whole aspect of Ishiki's plan is gone. And, it's brave, it's Boruto sort of thinking on his feet, but the fact is he's just holding a kunai up to his neck, and that is ultimately quite easy for Isshiki to deal with, as we can see. But this scene is here more to highlight Boruto's devotion and how dedicated he is at this point, that he committed to doing this. And it links into the talk he had with Sasuke before going into this fight, that he had made a lot of kind of more mature decisions going into this, and this is kind of one of them. And it is interesting that this is a chapter where both Naruto and Boruto basically make the decision that they'll sacrifice themselves for the sake of the mission. That's interesting that both of them go through different but similar experiences, which is quite cool. So we cut back to Shikamaru and Amado. So yeah, you have to feed an Otsutsuki to 10 tails, and then another reaction to show there's other people in the room. So yes, the only way 10 tails will transform into the divine tree is to do it that way. You could even say that this is the number one reason why Otsutsuki always invade a planet in pairs. So one of the two is a sacrifice. That's the title of the chapter, of course. One gets eaten and cultivates the divine tree, and the other watches over the tree's growth until the chakra fruit develops. All makes sense. Katasuke is kind of like, wow, so the chakra fruit is that valuable that they'd sacrifice themselves for it. But then, like Kawaki, they all kind of remember the karma. Does it work still when they sacrifice themselves for the divine tree? And in Amado's opinion, it does. They always have a vessel prepared ahead of time so they can sacrifice themselves to the divine tree but still live. And Shikamaru notes how convenient that is. So Sumire points out that, okay, Isshiki is here, he came here with Kaguya. They were planning to grow a divine tree using this method? yes. And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the plan, at least on Isshiki's part. Kaguya, being lower ranked, would have been the sacrifice. That's how it was supposed to go. But as I just told you, Kaguya turned traitor, and we know she basically, nearly killed him. Isshiki was forced to live as a parasite inside Jigen's body and go on with the plan without Kaguya. By that you mean that Isshiki would have to feed himself to the Ten Tails to make the divine tree grow. Exactly, because there were no other Otsutsuki. So this is really, really interesting, in that this is the other part of this that, because this has just been revealed to us, we weren't really considering that he needs to get the divine tree growing, but he needs to sacrifice himself to it. But that's where Boruto comes in, as Sumire kind of quickly figures out here. That like, oh, other Otsutsuki, that means Boruto. Because of course, Amado has just explained to everyone that Boruto is undergoing Otsutsukification, and that he's getting close to, in a few more times, like, he's going to fully turn into Momoshiki. That's the plan for Boruto, is for Boruto to be used as a sacrifice for the Ten Tails, so that Isshiki doesn't have to do it. And, again, a lot of moving parts here, in the sense that, Isshiki is obviously destined to die in like a day or two, regardless of things, but he has to make sure he gets a karma mark kind of planted beforehand. But it almost feels like, does he even need Boruto once he plants the karma mark? Because then he could just, if he manages to win this fight on time and implant a karma mark, he can just sacrifice himself to the Ten Tails and still be like reborn eventually. There's no necessary like real need to use Boruto, but we'll get to more of the reason behind why he actually specifically wants to use Boruto in a minute. But either way, big reveal. This is what Boruto is for. That just to feed a Ten Tails to make a tree grow. Amado's like excellent deductive skills, Sumire. So yeah, we cut back to Isshiki and Boruto, and he's like, is this supposed to be a threat? And Boruto does say, I'm prepared to die. I have been the moment I entered this battle. But here's the gulf in class here. Isshiki just uses his eye powers and just brings a lot of cubes onto the battlefield. He then immediately just shrinks Boruto's kunai, so it's not a threat anymore. And Sasuke notes, threats don't work against him. You can't get caught. We can't win against him. All we can do is try and stall until his lifespan runs out, like we know about. He is then wiped out by Isshiki, who just comes in with a big flying kick and just smashes Sasuke into the ground. He then throws a bunch of the giant cubes on top of the area where Sasuke is, so it seems like Sasuke is out of the fight at this point. Boruto tries to counter with a Rasengan, but Isshiki just grabs his wrist and then just breaks his arm. Like you see on the panel, Boruto's arm at a terrible angle. This was just effortless for him to do this. Our main character just, arm broken just like that. He doesn't plan to kill him, you're correct, but I have no qualms about hurting you. And so, yeah, Boruto is at the will of Isshiki here. He can't do a thing against him at this point. And he confirms to him that, like, yes, you're going to get eaten by Ten Tails. That's the plan. We then cut back to Shikamaru and Amado. So yes, this is the full thing. The Otsutsukification of Boruto is brought up here, and that Amado notes Boruto will be a fairly powerful Otsutsuki at that. But I think realistically highlighting that Momoshiki is maybe higher ranked within the clan compared to Isshiki, who is higher than Kaguya. And that would sort of make sense, given that Momoshiki and Kinshiki came to Earth to kind of investigate what Kaguya was doing. Her whole White Zetsu army was in preparation of other Otsutsuki arriving on the scene. So it would make sense that they send sort of slightly higher ranked people to investigate the sort of lower ranked people. I think that roughly makes sense. And so he points out that, okay, this is another part of why Boruto is going to be chosen. He's going to be powerful, and that, in the same reason, the whole, you are what you eat type situation, the healthier, the stronger the thing you feed to the Ten Tails, the better chakra fruit you're going to get out of it. So it is better to feed it a new, young, healthy Otsutsuki, just reborn basically, compared to one on the verge of death, about to fall apart. So that's the other part of this. To get a good chakra fruit, Boruto makes the most sense as well. So I think they're basically presenting the idea that, like, if Isshiki sacrificed himself, it wouldn't be a particularly good chakra fruit, and it wouldn't be worth the effort to do it that way, even if he could technically do it on his own once he has someone with a karma mark. And so yeah, they all want to know, what is Boruto going to do? Kawaki sort of snaps a little bit at this point. He's sort of sick of Amado's attitude and just approach here. How much of this have you plotted and planned? He notes that you're gone too. You'll be dead just as much as anyone if, you know, Naruto and co can't, you know, defeat him. Why are you so calm in all of this? And he wants him to sort of react and give him something, basically. But he's like, is this really the best plan? Was there really no other way? And Amado's response here is pretty much just that, like, you know, he makes the best choice at the time, just like everyone else. He's critical in that you always have to be prepared to accept that result no matter what happens, and that, you know, Naruto's chances are slim, but it's the one and only prospect for victory. And he points out as well, the karma you loathed so much is gone, which also makes it possible to defeat Isshiki. He points out that we've got Isshiki in a situation where he can be defeated. It can happen. So he is sort of optimistic in all of this. Katasuke wants him to sort of calm down. You might just have to sit here quietly, Kawaki. And he realizes that is true, because without the karma, he doesn't really have any power to do anything on the battlefield. And so Amado asks him the question, and it's pretty telling here. I think this dynamic is going to be kind of important as we go forward with Kawaki. Is it powerlessness that's irritating you, or grief over losing the karma? And Kawaki's like, what? Like, basically, how could you say that second one? How could I possibly feel grief over losing the karma mark? And Amado's just like, never mind, forget it. But he knows he's sort of hit home here. So powerlessness would make sense, that he wants to be able to help, but he's lost the source of his power, which is the karma mark. And so is there an element of, he feels he needs that to sort of be part of everything, and without it, he is not the person that, you know, Naruto took in and became friends with Boruto and so on. So is this the setup for potentially, like, might Kawaki make a decision on his own that makes him, that, like, the other characters won't agree with, and he'll think it makes sense for himself, and so it will be maybe more of a betrayal type moment for Kawaki. It's difficult because if Isshiki takes over, then it will be more Isshiki in control of his body. And so you almost feel they'd go for more of a sacrifice style thing with Kawaki. But again, the exact specifics of how in control Isshiki would be in that case are difficult to tell. But as far as we're aware with the Momoshiki Boruto situation, unless they're full on have the horns and stuff like that, it should be the humans sort of still in control. So it feels like we have to have some sort of a turn to some degree happen with Kawaki. Whether he accepts the karma mark to try and maybe save someone, I feel that almost has to be the case, or in a way of, like, he maybe creates a deal where, like, he saves Boruto by taking the karma mark back, and that's what creates the dynamic, or something along those lines. Still, it's very interesting that they're building up that we are going to have to come back to Kawaki at some point, because he needs to get the karma mark to set up chapter 1, the very start of Boruto chapter 1. So he needs development to build up to that moment. But we cut back over to Naruto, who we obviously haven't seen in a while, and he is running through all these cubes on the battlefield to get back up to where everyone else is, and he's like, I can't sense chakra, it's these cubes' influence, they seem to block sensory ability. So he starts to talk to Kurama, and Kurama is basically like, what's your plan against his otherworldly power? And he just says, I'm out of ideas. But he gives, a speech about how even if he has to die, he will protect everyone, and he'll never give up, and he, like Sasuke, is going to commit to stalling him until his life runs out. And it's just the dedication from Naruto here. And Kurama realizes, so no real plan, huh? You're really prepared to die this time. Sorry, Kurama, I don't see any other choice this time. There might be a way, is what Kurama says, though. It's a do or die, last stand, ace up your sleeve thing. Only worth trying since you're expecting to get killed anyway. Why didn't you tell me about this beforehand? Because you'll die. Do this and it's over. But since you'll be killed either way, well, it's not a choice to make lightly, so you decide. Kurama leaves Naruto with the decision. Do you want to do this kind of hidden technique, knowing it will kill you, but it will likely give you enough power to kind of maybe achieve some sort of victory in this fight? Of course, Naruto's going to go for this, given what he just said in his speech there. But we cut back over to Isshiki sort of teasing Boruto on the ground. He's like kicking him, he's like standing on him, teasing him that, you will be consumed by the tree and it'll be a case of when you die. But then Naruto comes in, kick to the face. He sends Isshiki flying back a little bit, but Isshiki regains his footing quite quickly. Nice little moment then between Naruto and Boruto. Boruto says, you gotta get away, you'll be killed. But he's like, no, I'm the Hokage, don't you worry about me. Isshiki does offer the deal that he's sort of been offering since the start. Reveal Kawaki's location and I'll let you go, basically. So Naruto stands up and he says, Kurama, I'm ready. Kurama says, you sure? And he's like, yes, I've been prepared for a long time, from the day I became Hokage. No, actually, ever since I decided I wanted to become Hokage. So Kurama puts his hands together. He's preparing all of his chakra, it seems like. Some smoke comes up so you can't see Naruto undergoing the transformation. Everyone looks over at him as the smoke clears, and we get our look across these last 2 pages. Our first look at Naruto's new form, his new technique. It looks to be a new form of chakra mode or chakra cloak that is much more fox focused. Typically a lot of Naruto's recent chakra modes have been, he's just sort of, glowing kind of orangey yellow, but for the most part looks much the same. He has like sage mode on and some of them are not. His clothing, changes slightly, but nothing that's inherently super fox-like is coming through. Here it is. You can see the tails on the chakra cloak. His cloak literally is now a cloak of tails, basically. And then the other significant thing that we get a tease of here is a lot of markings on his face that sort of seem to sort of include a little bit of the sage mode style stuff, but then sort of like it comes up and he has sort of the kind of fox ears sort of coming up off the side of his head, almost like horns. And it's, at least to some degree, I'm not trying to make a super clear comparison here, but it feels like the similar type of sort of power transformation as when the Otsutsuki sort of karma transformation happens, like when Boruto turns into Momoshiki, like just these horns sort of coming out of his head. But I think it looks pretty cool from what we can see so far. I think the thing we don't have yet is like just a clear from the front, like what he looks like in full. Like, is there anything going on around his like chest or whatever? And then right now we don't have a great sense for what specifically this power is doing that his other abilities can't do. Right now it is just a new sort of fancier looking, sage mode or whatever, chakra mode. But the dialogue here right towards the end is, that's Naruto from Sasuke and from Isshiki. What's with his chakra? So Isshiki is impressed by the amount of chakra Naruto's putting out in this mode. So that's pretty interesting. The only thing I can think of here is that obviously this is a, tail beast, Jinchuriki style transformation. I'm guessing this is Kurama like pumping every ounce of chakra that he has, every ounce of his essence being through Naruto, and that is the threat here. That can Naruto's body handle that much chakra being, pumped through it? He's wearing it basically. And the question is going to be like, is the threat primarily to Naruto or is it to Kurama? Because we know Kurama, even if he dies, Kurama will be reborn, because the tail beasts are effectively they'll always reincarnate. That's just how they work, because they're basically just made of energy. But Naruto is at a real risk of dying here. Now, whether that is because if Kurama did die, it would be considered a tail beast extraction, and that would put Naruto at risk, I'm not sure, but I think it's probably some combination of the two. And I think they're probably going to go for the dynamic where it is two incredibly powerful fighters going up against each other here. In Naruto in this new mode, and Isshiki in his sort of newly reborn mode that he's going to have for a while. But both fighters are under a strict time limit. Naruto's not going to be able to hold this for that long, and Isshiki, they've been talking for chapters now. He has a time limit. It won't last. He won't last forever. He's going to be dead within a few days. So what's going on here? Is it enough just that big chakra spike for Naruto, or is there something more to it? What techniques are we going to see him use here that are going to differentiate this from kind of anything we've seen before? And then obviously next chapter coming in a month, November 20th, but there's a lot of moving parts to get into place to set up, I suppose, that sort of transition into Boruto Shippuden, some sort of a time skip, in that they're setting up Naruto is going to die after performing this technique. But Sasuke, we also suspect something is potentially going on here. He hasn't really been involved or that useful in the fight up to now. I doubt Sasuke's going to get a power boost along the same lines as this to participate in the fight that much. So I think it feels like this might be where they're setting up the Rinne Rebirth stuff with Sasuke. He has the Rinnegan, so that is a technique he should know about and be able to perform. And if Naruto does actually die, Sasuke can revive him by sacrificing his own life. That is a way they can do things here so that we technically, I suppose, see both Naruto and Sasuke die, but Naruto is actually able to live on. And the reason for that is, of course, that from the first chapter of Boruto, they seem to imply that Naruto is actually still alive. Unless you just have to read the wording kind of weirdly of just I'll send you the same place I sent Naruto, I think is in or around the dialogue that it is. And send you dead, is that really the right way to do it? I don't think so. So that would imply that Naruto is still out there somewhere, but maybe missing. And then the death of Sasuke would be impactful to, of course, Boruto, seeing it happen right here in front of him. It would be impactful to Naruto, of course, and it would be impactful to Sarada for it to happen. That kind of feels like what they need to do. But that's forgetting about the setup between Boruto and Sasuke going into this, which is that if Boruto does go into the Momoshiki mode, Sasuke will be the one to stop Boruto. So it's a lot of time stuff of how exactly is this going to happen. It feels like we can't finish this fight unless we get to see Boruto in his Momoshiki mode go up against Isshiki. There's no way they're not going to do that, surely. But when is that going to happen? I guess it would be Boruto's response to maybe Naruto's technique taking him out. And the question then is okay, he's maybe able to fend off Isshiki, but then Isshiki has to give the karma mark to Kawaki. So does Kawaki have to join the battlefield at some point? Does he sense what's happening out here? Do they hear about characters dying and he rushes out to make something happen and makes a decision? It's hard to really picture just how exactly everything is going to play out, because there's a few set things that sort of have to happen. We have to, within a few years, be able to get to a point where Boruto, who still has a karma mark, is able to fight against Kawaki, who also has a karma mark. And how does that all work? Combined with the fact that, okay, we're talking about the chakra tree and planting a new one. Is that going to happen like soon? Or are we still talking about that as if like that is like the end of the plan way off in the future? Because one of my main takeaways that I had to like look up some stuff about to just like get in my head right, like, okay, this is the way to think about it, is just, oh yeah, like the whole Ten Tails thing of like, where did the other one come from? That they talk in this chapter about Kaguya and Isshiki coming to Earth to grow a chakra tree. But as far as we're aware from the Kaguya backstory that we have, Kaguya, when she seemingly arrived, there was already a tree there with a chakra fruit grown, which she then ate. Which is why we dealt with a chakra tree, a divine tree, already in Naruto, like related to the ending of Shippuden and so on. So, what is this second tail beast? Is this the one that those two were meant to plant? That there was one already there from like some other Otsutsukis that had arrived before, but that they were going to plant this other one, which is, I suppose, Isshiki, as I suppose the leader of those two, being the higher ranked one. He knows where it is, and that's why he has it. Because otherwise, they would have had to get it from somewhere else, like another planet or another dimension, which needs a whole other exploration. When they arrived together, then Kaguya took him out. That's what I want to know. And it also just brings up the question of like, wait, to the Otsutsukis, a Ten Tails is just like a seed, basically. What are the Ten Tails like, just like to the Otsutsukis? Like, is it just an animal that exists in whatever home planet they're from, that they can just like casually send to Otsutsuki off to a planet with one of these giant monsters, which, like, to us, our main connection to like Ten Tails is that one of them was separated into the Nine-Tailed Beasts, and they just like, every duo of Otsutsukis have a Ten Tails with them. Where do they get them from? There's still a big question about just like, okay, can we go back a few steps here and just explain this a little bit more? Because that seems like really interesting to me. Again, I do think further into the future of this series we will get much deeper into the history of the Otsutsukis and stuff like that, and they're just the questions that are at least on my mind about what's going on here. But yeah, like I said, some pretty eventful stuff. I'm so excited to see what happens next. One, just to see what Naruto can do in this mode, what, you know, power level he's at. Like, is he now an equal to Isshiki or what? And then what is Sasuke going to do? What's Boruto going to do? Is Kawaki going to make a move going forward? Is there more to be explained with regards to like the lore of the Otsutsukis to connect everything together, and just the pieces being put into position to set up what we know sort of has to happen? But yeah, apart from, as usual, Boruto doing its sort of usual thing of perhaps needlessly extending out a few scenes to not feature as much content, it was a very strong chapter once again. The manga is just in a really good place right now, where everything is pretty hype at the moment, so that's really good. But there are my thoughts on the chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.